Good afternoon, and welcome back to the UN headquarters, dear Deputy Chairperson of the African Union. It's always a pleasure
African Union Commission.
African Union Commission, you're right.
Yes.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you. We have been exchanging ideas in the past 2 years. And thank you, of course, for taking time of your busy schedule. I know that the General Assembly week is by itself busy, and yours must be even more. Throughout your tenure as the Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, you have worked tirelessly to advocate for the continent's rightful place at the global leadership table. You have been a strong voice on that.
Thank you.
Last Sunday, a historic moment happened for the world, which could potentially transform multilateral cooperation across Africa. There is a feeling that the approval, a strong approval of the Pact of the Future might have created additional global policy space for Africa to increase its influence. The Pact of the Future has been overwhelmingly adopted, as I just mentioned. And the Pact has several aspects closely linked to our 2063 agenda. My first question. Based on your assessment of Africa's current position on the global stage, how can the UN and the AU leverage this opportunity to work more closely together in advancing Africa's priorities?
Thank you, Cristina, for having me. And congratulations on a very successful Summit of the Future and the UN General Assembly in general. It's not an easy job for you at the UN, but we are always proud of the delivery. You're right. Africa is the powerhouse of solutions for the world, be it in youth, in climate solutions. You know, we are the biggest, I think, carbon sink for the betterment of the humankind. And so many other opportunities. And we are also at an opportune time where we are a member of the G20, and now the pact that had just been approved has featured Africa as a standalone entity, which is unprecedented. Because normally we have this crisis or conflict between LDCs and the low-income countries, and which is dividing us as Africa. But we are glad that this time we are one as a bloc. And for what we can do together with the UN is actually to amplify and deepen what we have already started.
Exactly.
You know that our principles have set us on a path of collaboration where the African Union is having agency of whatever is being done, because we have a blueprint, which is Agenda 2063, almost overlapping with SDGs and slightly wider than the SDGs. And we have committed to implementing it together. So one framework, two agendas. That is the marching orders. And you have been, and your colleagues, and my dear sister, DSG, Amina Mohammed, really demonstrating strong leadership in implementing the sustainable development side of it. And I'm glad that we are already collaborating to deepen our co-creation, to deepen our joint planning, to deepen our deployment on the ground, how we are supporting our member states in a more coordinated manner, how we are actually mobilizing resources and prioritizing together. How are we implementing a common monitoring and reporting framework? I think if we could do better in that, I think we'll be supporting our member states even more. We know that the UN has the privilege of having a footprint on the ground,
Yes.
which the African Union does not have necessarily in terms of organizations. And we know also that you have a vast, pool of knowledge that you have on the continent and globally. You have systems that are already, tested. So if we put all of that together and then you support us, that we really support our member states together better. I think that is what I see we can continue doing. And the next thing is continue the global advocacy. Because although we have a pact approved, the challenge is going to be in the implementation. And if we don't continue persistently pushing for action, then it can easily just be sitting there. And few years down the road, there's nothing to show for it.
Thank you very much. Allow me to take one strong sentence from your intervention, dear Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Africa is the powerhouse of the solutions for the world. And you provide a couple of examples. And it was clear in your intervention that to unleash this potential, Africa's powerhouse of the solutions, I got the feeling that the collaboration between AU and UN are already playing a critical role, but there is space even to do more. But we can acknowledge that we are in the right track. Having said that, allow me to jump to our second question. Since the start of your term, what are the key milestones that you have achieved in advancing the Commission's strategic objectives?
Mm-hmm.
Take this opportunity to tell us your big outcomes.
Oh, my big outcomes are the outcomes of the Commission because it's a teamwork. And you know that we came in as the first Commission after the implementation of the institutional reform and the new organizational structure of the Commission. So it used to be 10 commissioners, now we are 8, 6 commissioners, a deputy chairperson, and the chairperson. So that configuration, it was not just a mere restructuring. It was also following a thinking of repositioning the African Union as an institution, giving it more resources to operate, but also demanding more accountability and transparency to it. So when I joined as the first female deputy chairperson, whose responsibilities and mandate is determined because it used not to be specified, now it's administration and finance. And what do we mean by that? We mean implementing the institutional reform in terms of sustainable financing of the organization. We mean also running the organization efficiently and effectively. We mean all that is organizational coherence and the result-based management systems that we have to put in place. We mean digital transformation. We mean, implementing world-class standards and delivering results for our member states. So what I can see are the key outcomes or achievements of that. First of all is that, this commission, I found it very poorly staffed in terms of senior leaders. Only 4 directors were in place at that time. 4 out of maybe 25 or 26 directors. So far, I have recruited more than 20 directors and actually other directors for organs as well. I'm not counting them into this over 20. This is just for the commission. As we speak, out of the senior leadership of the commission, we are only to recruit 4 remaining ones. Why? Because we are implementing the recruitment in a very strict and constrained context where you have to abide quota, regional representation, gender, and so on and so forth. And so for these 4 remaining positions, we had to re-advertise and re-advertise and re-advertise because, we couldn't get what we need to have like a 50-50 team of directors. But I'm sure that by December we'll be done with that. So that is one big one. On financing, we managed really to kind of really bring back decency and a sense of ownership and responsibility to the finance function, to the point that member states now are contributing to the tune of close to 90% the contributions of member states paid on time. And they are capable of financing all the operational costs of the organization, commission and organs and officers. Of course, we still have a challenge in terms of implementing the target for the program financing, which is 75% target. We are not yet there on that. But I managed also to innovate around because we're seeing, I would say, uncomfortable dependency on international partners. So I've been running a mobilization for internal African institutions, including the private sector, to support the organization. So we have now our big banks, the ADB, the Afrexim Bank, supporting the African Union and its programs. We have now the private sector supporting the Peace Fund. We have implemented the Peace Fund, in which member states have contributed $400 million in terms of their seed capital. And now we are ready to go out and mobilize. Private sector in Accra in July this year have contributed to this fund, and more are coming on board. So this is something that is big. I can talk of other things such as digital transformation. We have claimed back the sovereignty of the data of the African Union, which used to be, I don't know, hosted where. We are now having a state-of-the-art data center, because data is what we do as an intergovernmental organization, and data is power. So we have now capacity that can host all our data. We can even host or co-host with the member states if they wish so. So I think this is big. My legacy project has been also to push for the implementation of the Women's Decade for Financial and Economic Inclusion, because I'm saying, being here as the top official in the public service of the African Union, a female every woman is looking up at, so I have to be also responsible for them. And for that, I have put and spearheaded a framework which we call Women and Youth Financial and Economic Inclusion Framework, Wi-Fi 2030. We want to organize how the partnerships on the continent are delivering for women and youth. We want to unlock $100 billion for 2020 to 2030 for women and youth SMEs. And we want to do so in a more transparent, organized, synergized, avoid duplications, and allow also accountability to chip in. Women have to tell what they have experienced because of our collaboration and partnerships. And youth have also to feel what they have benefited from it. So this framework we have launched it in 2022. We are now done with the planning stage. As we speak, we are doing a landscaping exercise on the field to come up with how can we be doing some initial collaborative interventions to support FCFTA implementation. And in February, we'll be having a report that we'll be putting in place. We'll be having cohorts that we are starting to support, and we'll be having our event, our convening to really keep creating space, convening for the private sector, for the financial sector, and other partners to come and demonstrate what they are doing for women and youth of the continent. So such are some of the achievements. But I cannot forget the Agenda 2063. Because, together with the colleagues, we have made sure that the second 10-year implementation plan is well done. We evaluated the 10 years finished. We came up with a new set, which is fully aligned. We came up with the first ever African Union-wide strategic plan. That is demonstrating how, under the accounting officer, who is the chairperson of the African Union Commission, every organ, every institution is cascading from the second 10-year implementation plan. What are they going to do to deliver on the Agenda 2063? And now we are at a stage of taking it to actually the operational parts of it as we implement for the very first time the RBM, result-based management. So all those systems we are putting in place, implementing with very limited resources. We are still challenged in terms of human capital, human resources, in terms of headcount. We are still challenged in terms of budget because our member states are suffering for all these issues, including COVID, crisis everywhere, geopolitical conflicts, and debt issues. So our budgets have been capped because of that. So we have to think hard about alternative sources of financing. So that is all that I've been busy doing. And I think, of course, in 4 years, you can only do this much. But I hope and I pray that this is already set on a path that is sustainable. So the African Union is also unstoppable.
Dear Deputy Chairperson, this is an outstanding list. You name it first, the consolidation of the middle level leadership management in the organization. So structure issues, accountability, transparency, sustainable financing linked to results-based management. Then you went to data and you underscore data ownership, critical. Then you move to the Agenda 2063 and how you and your team put into motion a strategic planning work stream that would involve not only the Commission but all African Union bodies. This is, I do believe that this is amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Now I would like to move to the AU Team of the Year, education. Is our, I believe it is our challenge, education. You know, dear Deputy Chairperson of the African Union Commission, that OSA, my office, the office that supports me as the special advisor on Africa, on an annual basis, we organize Africa Dialogue Series. And the 2024 edition sought to amplify exact education in Africa as a challenge and as a must that cannot be postponed. In the Africa Dialogue Series in 2024, of course, one of the things that we tried from a narrative standpoint, from a conceptual standpoint, was to say to everybody, yes, it's important to build schools. It's important, the physical part of the challenge. But above all, we need to build strong institutions. We need to build strong national education systems that build 100 schools today, but are ready to do the same in 25 years. So I would like to get your perspectives on this, on education as one of the major challenges in Africa, and how you link that to our challenge of financing for development in getting the necessary resources to tackle this issue.
You know, education is key. Tell me which country has managed to develop over a generation, and we know so many of them, without focusing on education, without focusing on
No
innovation,
examples.
without focusing on research and development, without focusing on the quality of teachers. The challenge in Africa today, 80% of the government's expenditures go to education. Yet, this is not enough because we still have more than in many countries, our teachers are underpaid. And because of that, you cannot increase the wage bill,
Yes.
from being, passed through the Ministry of Finance myself. I know something about that, from my previous past. You can't expand that wage bill, so you're constrained to resort maybe to short-term teachers, maybe not necessarily the best qualified ones. And how do you then transform education? School feeding, which is your favorite.
Yes.
All these demand money. So, yes, building strong institutions is key. But where do we get the investments to build these institutions? That's where the issue of actually debt restructuring, the issue of revising our taxation regimes, the issue of thinking about how we can de-risk the private sector to also, invest in education and research and development and innovation. How can we be maybe being more creative around our carbon markets? Those are the things that we need to think about and continue the advocacy around so that we really have the muscle. So my point is we need huge investments, huge financial capacity if we are to invest in institutions, in the education institutional systems. So really, we can't agree more on that. I was looking at a very interesting chart, which was kind of plotting the debt service as a percentage of GDP.
Yes.
And also expenditure on education. Some 10 years back, the service moved from 3% of GDP to 12%, as education came down from 17 to 12%. So they are matching on a median basis for Africa. But for many countries, actually, they have already crossed.
Exactly.
So, and the expenditure on that service is way higher than the percentage expenditure on education. Why do we have our countries really have to choose between paying debt and investing in their people? Yet these are the youth we are talking about.
Exactly.
On which the world actually is dependent. Because come 10, 20, 30 years, the youth, the labor force, it's going to be African face. So we needed to look at this collectively, and I look at the pact and the global digital compact and the declaration for future generations, really setting us on the right path. But my worry is always how many commitments we have had, including the SDGs. We are struggling to get there, and we are only 6 years remaining down the road. So really the responsibility, we need to be more consequential in terms of investing. And in investing in Africa, you're not just doing charity. No. Actually, we promise the highest return on investment.
Yes.
If you look closely at it. But sometimes the power relations dictate otherwise. But I don't think it's sustainable. We have to think at it more selflessly and more smartly as the world. Because really, as I said, Africa is the powerhouse of solutions. And our youth, if they are not educated, if they cannot drive the digital transformation we are talking about, if they cannot claim and be part of this artificial intelligence we are talking about, to transform our Africa, to transform our agriculture, our food security, to transform our health, our education, to transform even peace and security, then we'll be missing all of them behind. And in doing so, we'll be cutting the branch of a tree on which we are seated, which means we are going to fall down together and at the same time with that branch that we are cutting off. So that's how I see it.
Dear Deputy Chairperson, you put it in a very strategic way. In the short term, the education sector need resources today. And of course, we need to identify financing mechanisms. You mentioned, for example, debt swaps, for example, that could provide in the short term the resources that the education sector needs today. And there is a growing wave that is advocating for debt swaps. Instead of serving the debt, let's put that money on education, human capital development. So is in fact a short-term solution. But at the same time, you say, while we concentrate in designing these short-term solutions, at the same time, let's also use part of the resources to create more sustainable solutions, structured solutions that at the end of the day should come from Africa's internal resources. So increase our capacity to mobilize our domestic resources. I think we have time. Let me move to the fourth question. And the fourth question is related to education. And you already named in responding to the third question, young Africans, the youth. So young Africans start taking the reins of Africans' development to accelerate change. And in the case of OSA, we have created a space for African youth voices, and dear Deputy Chairperson is coming very, very strongly. The landing of young African voices in this New York stage are coming very, very, very strongly. So in a continent that, as you know, and allow me to provide you two numbers, between today and 2050, the African population between 15 and 35 will be growing by more than 75%. For the rest of the world, only 6%. Where is the epicenter? Of course, from a demographic standpoint, will be in Africa. What is your message to youth to harness Africa's demographic potential and the digital revolution? Your message.
Okay.
As an African leader.
My message to them is, one, the African Union frameworks are consistent on highlighting the asset of the continent, which is our youth. We are also highlighting digital transformation as a key area. We have a whole moonshot, number 2, talking about digital infrastructure and public infrastructure in accelerating our integration as a continent. We have a whole moonshot 6 focusing on our people, including our youth. We have actually already approved continental framework on AI, African continental framework on AI approved. That is deliberately stating what we can do to harness this powerful technology and also guard against its adverse effects in case it's abused. So that is my first message to our youth, that we are getting it ready for you to take and harvest it. My second message is that we are putting together with the UN, by the way, funding behind the youth startups. You know, the Timbuktu,
Yes.
which is the UN initiative.
Outstanding initiative.
Yes, which we are collaborating together to accelerate. But my key message is on the soft side of things. Can our youth be more grounded in our African values as we develop our own content and data sets? Because it's very, very important. In whose eyes, in whose values, in whose systems are we innovating? Are we harvesting these technologies? Are we creating solutions? They should fit the needs of Africa and the specific configurations of Africa and the specific challenges of Africa, but also, above all, the values and cultural heritage of Africa. Because this is key in our aspirations in the Agenda 2063 and our second 10-year implementation plan. Culture and values of Africa should be preserved. That is my message. My other message is, as they innovate, can they be taking us more, not on the services side of things, readily available for consumption? Can they be stretching more to find solutions, applications that are solving our issues in the manufacturing, in our value addition, in our beneficiation of our natural resources, including our minerals? Because we need to create jobs for many, many people, including those who still have gaps in literacy because of, the starting point, which is not, already inclusive. So we need also them to focus on driving the industrialization on the continent, because that's where the growth, the double-digit growth, is going to happen. So that's what I can tell our youth in a nutshell.
Dear Deputy Chairperson, and your interventions allow me to end this interview with a strong sentence from you. African youth, more grounded on African values and culture heritage, so their contribution in terms of innovative solutions are technically fit to African challenges, paving the way to a strong takeoff for Africa's industrialization. What a strong sentence to end this interview. Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, pleasure's mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.